accomplish then when you did take your children's lives?
Maybe in their innocent years, God would take them up.
God would take them up to be in heaven, is that what you mean? All right. And if you had not taken their lives, what did you think would happen to them?
I guess they would have continued stumbling.
And where would they end up?
Hell.
In hell.
Many of us in the true crime community have recently watched the documentary Shiny Happy People that outlines the crimes of Josh Duggar as well as many other prominent figures in the Christian fundamentalism movement. In this doctrine of belief, many families follow the Quiverfull theological position that encourages a couple to have as many children as possible, because large families can spread the word of God to even more people. In this belief, large families are a blessing from God and women should not use any form of birth control or family planning. The Quiverful lifestyle was created from one short verse in the Bible that states, "Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from Him." Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Psalm 127. There have been several large figures in the community that have been accused or convicted of sexual assault, fraud, and even murder. Andrea Yates was a mother of 5 children who was severely mentally ill. She was forced into this lifestyle by her husband, Rusty Yates. Because of the lack of medical care and common sense on Rusty and Andrea's behalf, their children suffered and their life was cruelly cut short. Andrea Paya Kennedy was born in Houston, Texas on July 2, 1964, to her parents Judah and Andrew Kennedy, and she was the youngest of 5 children. Andrea struggled with mental illness from a young age, and at 17 she struggled with bulimia, depression, and suicidal ideation. Andrea graduated from Milby High School in 1982 as class valedictorian. She was also the captain of the swim team and an officer in the National Honor Society. Andrea then attended University of Houston for a 2-year pre-nursing program and graduated from University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston. Andrea worked at University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center as a registered nurse beginning in 1986. In the summer of 1989, Andrea began dating Russell or Rusty Yates. The two were neighbors at the Sunscape Apartments in Houston and hit it off right away. Andrea was a late bloomer and only started dating when she was around 23 years old, and she suffered a bad depressive period when her first relationship dissolved within a year. Andrea and Rusty lived together for a while before getting married on April 17, 1993. The couple committed to the Quiverful lifestyle at this point and announced to friends and family that they would seek to have as many babies as nature allowed. Rusty was raised as an evangelical Christian and was an engineer at NASA. The couple welcomed their first child, Noah, on February 26, 1994, and Andrea became a stay-at-home mother. Before long, Andrea gave birth to another son, John, on December 12, 1995. In 1996, Rusty was required to relocate to Seminole, Florida for about 6 months. Andrea and the children accompanied Rusty while living in a 38-foot travel trailer. Rusty looks fondly back at this time. He was happy that he realized he did not need as many worldly possessions as he owned and was glad that many of the family's items were in storage. Shortly after, they moved into a customized Greyhound bus. Andrea and Rusty befriended and purchased their bus from a man named Michael Warrenecki. He was a traveling minister, and his religious views influenced the couple, even though his beliefs were rather extreme. He would preach that women who allowed their children to behave badly would go to hell, and it would make their children go to hell as well. Andrea closely followed Michael's sermons, taking what he said to heart. By the time Andrea gave birth to their 3rd son, Paul, the couple had returned to Houston in their bus. Living conditions were cramped and chaotic, and Andrea was often alone with the children. She began isolating herself away from the family and stopped exercising and began reading the Bible obsessively. Luke Yates was born February 15, 1999, as the couple's 4th child. By this time, Andrea was showing troubling behaviors that were ignored by Rusty while he went to work every day. On June 16, 1999, Rusty found Andrea shaking and chewing on her fingers. The next day, she overdosed on pills that were prescribed to her father. Andrea was rushed to the hospital by her mother after Rusty left his family under the care of Andrea's parents. Andrea was admitted to the hospital and prescribed antidepressants. Shortly after this, she was discharged from the hospital. Andrea held a knife to her neck, begging her husband to let her die. She was hospitalized yet again and given a mixture of medications that include Haldol and other antipsychotic drugs. Andrea felt better soon after and was advised to continue the medication at home. Rusty then moved the family into a small house because the living situation on the bus was far too cramped and Andrea was clearly struggling. Andrea was stabilized for a few weeks until July, when she suffered from a nervous breakdown and where she attempted suicide 2 times and was in a psychiatric hospital on 2 separate occasions. During her time at the hospital, Andrea saw Dr. Eileen Starbranch. She advised Andrea that she should not have any more children as it would guarantee future psychotic depression. Andrea became pregnant not even 2 months later with their 5th child. Throughout Andrea's numerous psychiatric hospital stays, Rusty would ask the doctors to discharge her, and when she arrived home, he did not alert her doctors that she would stop taking medication. Doctors urged Andrea to stay at the hospital and continue a medication regimen, but because of their religious beliefs, the couple did not want Andrea to continue this medication, as in the Christian fundamentalist lifestyle, it is often regarded that mental illness is just a demon and something that you can pray away. Andrea began homeschooling her oldest son Noah and looked after the other children all throughout the day. Andrea had monthly visits to her doctor as well. She eventually told her doctor she stopped taking medication in late 1999, but she stated she was feeling okay at that point. She stopped attending visits after January 12, 2000, after Rusty accompanied her to one of her hospital visits. The couple told doctors that they wanted Andrea to be completely off medication unless she was symptomatic. Mental health medication is usually not taken as needed. Many of these medications alter brain chemistry and take some time getting used to and weaning off. So Andrea was not allowing these medications to really help her, and Rusty did not encourage his wife to get better. The couple's main goal was to continue having as many children as possible. Over a year went by and Andrea continued to suffer with major depression symptoms and the death of her father. Despite her visiting a variety of doctors, what they told her was often not taken seriously and she was quickly discharged to go home. None of these doctors also indicated that Andrea may be a danger to her children. Andrea continued to study the Bible under her pastor Michael, and she started to have the feeling that she was a bad mother, and this would cause her children to be sinners in God's eyes. She also began to neglect her children and not feed them throughout the day. In May 2001, Andrea was found at home in a catatonic state after she filled her bathtub. At the time, her psychologist believed that she was suicidal and attempted to drown herself. On the morning of June 20th, 2001, Andrea's mental state came to a head when Rusty left for work, despite her doctors telling him she should not be left alone. Andrea locked up the family dog and filled the bathtub and one by one drowned all 5 of her children. Her son Noah saw Andrea drowning Mary and asked what was wrong with his sister. When he realized something was not right, Andrea began chasing him around the home. I cannot even imagine the terror these children went through that day. The person who they should trust the most in this world to betray them in this manner, and also having to watch their siblings suffer.
What time was it that you got out of bed this morning?
About 8:10.
Okay. And who in your household was awake at that time?
My husband, Mary, and Luke, and Paul.
We knew she started with Paul, who was the middle child, then she proceeded with Luke, killed him. We knew that she took John then from her statement and drowned him, put him in the bed. Then she drowned Mary, left Mary floating in the tub when she summoned Noah, the 7-year-old, in there.
For anyone to kill one child, to see that this child is dead, has died, to have that emotional effect and then go to the next child, it's just, it's hard to even imagine or put yourself in that person's position. How could anyone do that occurs to you?
Andrea then called Rusty and told him to come home right away. Andrea confessed to drowning her children, and Rusty's friend George Parnham acted as her attorney. The defense's expert testimony stated that Andrea was psychotic and that Texas law requires that in order to successfully assert the insanity defense, the defendant must prove that they could not discern right from wrong at the time of the murders. In March 2002, the jury rejected the insanity defense and found Andrea guilty. The jury refused the death penalty, but Andrea was given life imprisonment and eligibility for parole within 40 years. In January 2006, Andrea's sentence changed because one of the prosecution witnesses, Dr. Peter Yates, admitted to giving a false testimony during the initial trial. He stated that he viewed an episode of Law & Order that featured a woman who drowned her children and was acquitted by reason of insanity. The writer Suzanne O'Malley, who was covering the trial for Oprah magazine, was a previous writer on Law & Order. She stated that no episode existed at that time and that Dietz's false testimony may have been influential in the jury's decision. This caused a retrial, and Andrea again pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was granted bail on the condition that she admit herself into a mental health treatment facility. After 3 days, Andrea committed herself to North Texas State Hospital. Andrea has stated that she has no intention of ever leaving the hospital. As terrible as these murders are, and Andrea absolutely did an awful and unforgivable act, I do feel that Rusty is also to blame as well. Because of his religious beliefs and his rule over his family, he was not worried what would happen to Andrea or their children, despite doctors telling the couple that having more children and leaving Andrea alone would cause Andrea's mental health to further decline. I do feel that with the rise of Christian fundamentalism in America in the last few years, we may see more terrible crimes take place because of lack of common sense with family planning and the denial of mental health. Rusty has since been remarried and has another child, and when he was on Oprah, he does not appear sympathetic for his children, but only himself.
It's difficult at times. I mean, there are times where he does something that reminds me of one of, my first 5 children.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all found it helpful and informative. I hope you all have a great day and stay safe out there. Goodbye.